Hi everyone, it's Mora Atara. We spoke about in class how the Sanhedrin met in 5 different locations. So far we spoke about one. We spoke about when the Sanhedrin met in the Beit HaMikdash. We also spoke about how times after this were not so great. And unfortunately, the Sanhedrin had to move outside the Beit HaMikdash, but the Sanhedrin did still stay within Jerusalem. When the Sanhedrin was in Jerusalem, Hillel HaZakin died. Therefore, we needed a different Nasi. The time period of the Sanhedrin was long, and therefore, we had more than one. We had 2 Nasiim. We mentioned that the Nasiim were a family of rulers, which we called a dynasty. If you look at who the next 2 Nasiim were, we see this clearly on the slide. The next Nasi was Rabban Gamliel Harishon, who was the Neched, the grandson of Hillel. And the next Nasi was his son, who was Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel Harishon. Now the reason it says Rishon and Rishon here is because since it was a family of rulers, we're going to see the names Gamliel and Shimon come up again, because after someone would pass away, some of you may be familiar with this from people that are named after different people in your families. After they would pass away, they would name after the family. They would name after the person that died, and the names were very similar, Gamliel and Shimon. So we're going to have later a Rabban Gamliel Hasheni and Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel Hasheni, and therefore we call him Rabban Gamliel Harishon and Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Harishon. If you see here, this is the chart, exactly the chart that we have in class. Here are the Nasiim that we just mentioned. Rabbi Gamliel HaZakin, who was the first Rabban Gamliel Harishon, and we also have Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel Harishon. Where it says over here, Chachamim be'oto dor, those are the different rabbis that ruled at that time. Now, we said, if you remember what the chart looked like from when the Sanhedrin met in the Beit HaMikdash, we said that Shammai was in the generation, and we know that the Nasi was Hillel at that time. Well, who came after Hillel and Shammai? Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai. It's interesting to see. First, we had the actual people themselves, Hillel and Shammai, and then we had the bayit, the house of Hillel and the house of Shammai. What type of house are we talking about here? Beit Hillel, Beit Shammai? We're talking about the Beit Midrash, the study hall, the learning place of Hillel and of Shammai. Now, what was it like after Hillel died? What was it like during this time period? Unfortunately, the Jews were under Haromanim. They were under the Roman rule. And what did the Romans say to the Jews? They said, "We hate this Judaism thing. You can't use the death penalty anymore. You can't have your own courts here." They tried to take away as much power as they could for the Jews. What was it like living at that time? We can see over here. There was violence. The Jews were fighting with each other. There was cruelty. And the Romans put a siege around Jerusalem. They made sure that no one could get inside and outside, which was very dangerous for the Jewish people because a lot of their resources could have been found outside Israel, outside Jerusalem, and they were forced to stay inside Jerusalem with whatever they had inside. We see on the bottom here what I had just said. The Jews revolted against the Romans, and therefore, the Romans put a siege around Jerusalem. Because Bnei Yisrael, because the Jewish people were fighting back, the Romans were upset and they closed us into Jerusalem. As we said, this was not a good time for Jerusalem. Unfortunately, Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Harishon, the son of Rabban Gamliel HaZakin, so the great-grandson of Hillel, went out to battle with the Romans at this time, and unfortunately, he was murdered in the war. All of these are the events that led up to the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash, which we are going to learn about soon in one of the other time periods. And this time period right now, we are about 40 years before the destruction of the second Beit HaMikdash. In order to review all the information in this video, out your sheet, which is on the back of the last worksheet. This one is page 22, and let's fill out the page together. Eifo haya haSanhedrin b'tkufa hazot. Where did the Sanhedrin meet during this time? We know that the Sanhedrin stayed in Yerushalayim, but did not meet anymore in the Beit HaMikdash. Mi hayu hanesiim. I want you to go back in the video and see who were the Nesiim. Remember, one of them was the grandson of Hillel, and one of them was the great-grandson of Hillel, the son of the other Nasi. If you look at the third bullet over here, Hamered. A mered means a revolt. I want you to write on the following line, who revolted against who and why. Who rebelled or revolted against who and why. The next question on the sheet says, Mi mate b'techilat ha'tekufa hazot. Who died at the beginning of this tekufa? Not who I just mentioned at the end. Who died at the beginning? Who is no longer living at this time? Here's a little bit of a hint. Sorry, it's so messy. Who was the enemy, the oyev of the Jewish people at this time? Who was the enemy of the Jews? It's the same people that ends up destroying the second Beit HaMikdash, the Romans. Next question. Ma haromanim asu laYehudim hazman hazeh. What did they do? I want you to go back into the video and see what was life like during this time. What did they do to the Jewish people? Ma kara b'historia bizman hazeh. What was happening? What happened in history at this time? I want you to write for this one something relating to 40 years. Something that is, this is all leading up to something that happened 40 years after this time period. The next question says, Ha'im yesh onesh mavet bizman hazeh? Were they allowed to use the death penalty at this time? Did they have enough authority and control over their own people? I want you to answer that question. I then want you to write down over here in Yerushalayim what were the names of the two Nesiim. If you then look on the bottom of the sheet, I want you to highlight two of the groups of Chachamim that we talked about in the video. Remember, we talked about that Hillel and Shammai were in the last Tekufa, were in the last time period. Who was in this time period? Their Batei Midrash, their study halls, the people that came after them, that followed them, all of their Talmidim, the Talmidim of Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel.